I worked from 20 different countries last year, and here's exactly what I thought about being a digital nomad in Zanzibar. Welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me already, my name's Amy and I'm a full-time traveler. I share in-depth travel guides and tips about working remotely, so if you want to live this type of lifestyle and like these type of videos, make sure you subscribe for more. Zanzibar is absolute paradise, right? It's the perfect place to escape for a beach holiday or a winter vacation. And if you work online like I do, you might be considering calling Zanzibar your home or your home office. As someone who's worked from the island for 2 weeks, there's a few things you should know before you make any decisions. Alright, so let's get into it. The two most popular ways to get to the island of Zanzibar is either by flying in directly or by taking a ferry. If you have the opportunity and the budget to allow for flying directly to Zanzibar instead of taking the ferry from Dar es Salaam, definitely do it. While it might be a little bit more expensive, it will save you so much mental exhaustion when it comes to lugging all your things onto the ferry, dealing with the locals trying to kind of scam you and take your things, and not have to deal with any of that at all. So do it if you can. If you end up opting for the ferry, make sure you get there at least 1.5 hours before the ferry departs. That way you can get an economy ticket for only $30 US. If you arrive just before the ferry takes off, there'll be no economy tickets left and you'll have to pay for the business class, which is $40 US. When I was there in February of 2022, you still had to do a rapid antigen test when you would get to Zanzibar for about $10. However, I think those restrictions have loosened, but make sure you check the government website for all COVID related information. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of expected Zanzibar to have better accommodation for a budget traveler, and that was definitely not the case. You can find budget accommodation in the popular areas such as Paje or Nungwi, and there's going to be some hostels where you can be in a shared dorm for about $20 US a night. If a hostel really isn't your thing, you can expect to pay a minimum of $30 to $35 US per night for a small room in a guest house. You can also choose to do an Airbnb, which is definitely the best option if you're traveling with a group of friends who are also planning on working remotely. Transit in Zanzibar was also not quite as easy as I had expected. It's a fairly large island that takes about 2 hours to drive from north to south. There are definitely more convenient ways to get around, but it will cost you, and if you're traveling on a budget, it's not always going to be the easiest. Taxis will always try to charge you the absolute most, so don't be afraid to negotiate with them. If you take the ferry and you're trying to get to a different part of the island and you have to take a taxi, never pay more than half of what they suggest. For example, when I got off the ferry, I was going to the area called Paje, and they told me if the ferry would cost $65 US, and I talked them down to $30. A scooter or a car hire is definitely the best way to get around the island, especially if you want some flexibility. Just be careful if you do choose to rent a scooter, because many people get in accidents and it's something to just keep in mind. I personally had a really bad scooter experience when I was in the Philippines, so I've kind of sworn off scooters, at least in Asia, because I don't really trust it. And the ones in Zanzibar were giving me the same vibe, so I just was like, no scooters for me, and I luckily had a friend who hired one so I could just hop on the back of hers. If you're like me and you don't want to ride a scooter yourself, but you want the convenience and flexibility of being able to go on a scooter, you can hire people to drive you around on the scooters, and they are known as a boda. They cost around a quarter of the price of a regular taxi, and it makes it super easy to get around the island. You can ask anyone working at your accommodation to set up these bodas for you, however they'll usually take a cut. Or you can simply walk down a busy street, see anyone with a scooter, and just ask them if they do boda. Lastly, there is the local bus known as the Dala. I'm usually a little bit apprehensive when it comes to taking local transit on my own, especially in Africa as a solo female traveler. However, when push came to shove, I did not want to spend all that money on taxis because it was adding up. The Dala in Zanzibar is by far the cheapest way to get around the island. You can get from the top of the island, Nungwi area, all the way down to Stone Town, which is in the south, for about $1 US. Of course, this is definitely going to be the longest mode of transportation opposed to taking a taxi or a boda. and you'll probably be one of the only tourists on that bus. It can definitely be a little bit scary to be the only tourist on a local bus, but I found it really interesting to people watch, and everyone was friendly. They just kind of smiled and were staring a little bit at me because they hadn't seen a white person or don't see white people that often. So that was interesting, and yeah, I didn't really have a bad experience. People were nice. It's just, obviously there's a language barrier, so you can't really speak to them. This digital nomad guide wouldn't be complete if I didn't fill you in on the budget. Most digital nomads are looking for a place that's budget friendly so that they can save some money while they're working remotely and then use that money to travel and experience the places that they're in. Yes, you can certainly live and travel and work in Zanzibar on a budget. However, it's not my top choice for a budget destination. I actually found it to be quite pricey, especially because they were using the US dollar and that made everything go up, and as a Canadian, the conversion is not very good, so it ended up biting me in the ass. Finding a good place to work in Zanzibar can be a bit of a challenge if you don't know where to go. It also depends where on the island you are specifically. I think the best place to work in Zanzibar would be Stone Town. It's a World Heritage Site in Zanzibar City, and it's usually the first stop people take on their trip. This is because it's really close to the airport and the ferry terminal, so people either start or end their trip there. There's a lot that you can see and do within Stone Town. However, if you're looking for those crystal clear beaches with bright blue water, you're not going to find it there, and you're going to have to go to other parts of the island. It's also extremely humid and hot in Stone Town, especially during their really warm months. So that's something to keep in mind if you're planning on working there. It comes as no surprise that Zanzibar doesn't have the same infrastructure that you'll find in other parts of the world, so that means that there's often power outages for extended periods of time and you don't really know when they're going to come. This can make it extremely challenging to work, and it's also pretty challenging to find a place that has good Wi-Fi. But don't fret, there's a few different ways you can get around this. As soon as you arrive, get a SIM card with Zantel or Vodacom. I'd recommend getting a large amount of data, that way when the power cuts you can hotspot yourself. I personally got 37 gigs for $22 US, so it's a pretty good bang for your buck. This should last you the entire month, but you can always top up if you need to. You can also work from resorts if you have an important call or work you really need to get done. Because resorts have a lot of money, they will have the best Wi-Fi and they will have generators for when the power cuts. You can also work from restaurants and cafes because there aren't really many co-working places in Zanzibar. I think they're now starting to implement a few co-working areas in Stone Town, but the other areas like Paje and Nungwi will not have anything like that. You'll just have to go to cafes. Out of the beachy areas I went to, which is Paje and Nungwi, Paje had the best places to work from. So as I mentioned, Stone Town is one of the best places to work remotely from Zanzibar. I'll leave a list of the co-working options in Stone Town in the description box below. If you don't want to pay for a place to work in Stone Town, just work from a restaurant or cafe, I would definitely recommend checking out the Zanzibar Coffee House to get a drink because it has the most incredible view of the city, and they do have free Wi-Fi for an hour. That's good. However, you do have to pay after that, so not the best spot to work, but good to go maybe for after work drinks or at the start of your day. Although Paje is known as the party part of Zanzibar, there are definitely a few good spots that you can work from. Mr. Kahawa is definitely one of the best places to work from in my opinion. They have a good selection of food and drinks, the Wi-Fi is fast, and they have many places to charge your laptop. I also spent some time working from the Nest, which was beautiful, however their Wi-Fi was a bit spotty. Otherwise, I would check out some of the resorts along the beach if you're looking for a good place to work in Paje. When it came to finding good Wi-Fi in Nungwi, I was surprised that it was the hardest place to work from. It's a super touristy part of Zanzibar, so I expected that they would have a good connection, and I was wrong. Resorts are really the only place you're going to find reliable Wi-Fi here. If you're ready to make Zanzibar your next digital nomad destination, here are a few key things to keep in mind. Make sure your devices are always charged. This is super important because you honestly never know when the power is going to cut and for how long, so I'd also recommend keeping a few different power banks on you that are also charged up at all times. The weather is another big factor to bear in mind. As someone who loves the beach and loves warm weather in the summer, I can tell you that Zanzibar was too hot for me. I was there in February and it was 30 degrees plus humidity every single day. Even at night, it didn't drop below 29 degrees. It's also going to be super challenging to find a place that has air conditioning unless you're staying at an expensive resort. And I don't know about you, but mosquitoes absolutely love me. Unfortunately, I don't really love them, so working in Zanzibar was not the best for me. You can find some pretty good bug spray or cream at the local shops or just ask your hostel, and that helps a bit, but it's not going to get rid of them entirely. So the big question is working remotely from Zanzibar worth it? To be 100% completely honest with you guys, I am not sold on Zanzibar as a place for digital nomads. With the temperature being really hot throughout the day and night, I found it incredibly hard to stay focused during work hours. I also didn't really feel like there was much of a digital nomad community there. Sure, there were people working remotely, but it didn't really have like that good community vibe that I was looking for. It's definitely more of a place that you would just go for a quick vacation to enjoy the pristine beaches, but other than that, it didn't really feel like there was that much to offer. Working as a digital nomad is an extremely exciting endeavor, but it can be so overwhelming if you've never done it before. I designed the Becoming a Digital Nomad ebook specifically with first-timers in mind. It takes you through finding jobs, the best destinations, building a community, and so much more. I'll leave that in the description box if you want to check it out, and let me know if you have any more questions about working remotely from Zanzibar. If you like this video, please subscribe and like and comment, it really helps me out, and check out my other video I did on being a digital nomad in Cape Town. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday.